Hello, welcome to Taiwan. 我们这一集球场第一排呢，我们带 Ryan 教练来到台北东区一个很特别的地方。那这个地方呢，是在这2-3年一个茶艺空间。然后我们在这一集呢，会带 Ryan 教练体验一下台湾的茶的文化，因为毕竟他们在西方，其实对我们台湾的东方的茶的文化比较没有那么熟悉。What's the vibe right now that you feel?
Yeah, it's quiet. It's very relaxed. Something like if you told somebody what a traditional tea house would be like, this is kind of what you'd feel. It's unique. I haven't been to a place like this before.
Because I heard that you're not a coffee person.
Not a coffee person
You're
at
more
all.
a tea person, right?
Yeah, if I had to choose, coffee would be 0 for me. So tea would definitely be the choice for me.
So you might want to check this. 好，我们今天呢帮这个 Ryan 教练准备的是东方美人茶，那还有松香味。So they said it's something like pine scent Oriental beauty.
Pine scent Oriental beauty.
Oriental beauty is the name of the tea. I heard that you're very into like Asia or like Chinese culture. So I would like treat you something different.
Sure.
Just put it all.
Just put it all in
Put
there.
it all. 好，原来要 all in 啊 all in. You are a United States basketball coach.
那个含酒精吗？为什么会？
没有，因为很晚了，因为很晚了。
She said it's kind of
Yeah,
alcohol.
yeah, it's kind of like take a shot. Gombe.
Well, you can understand like some of the Mandarins.
Not much. I mean, no, not really.
Not really?
I mean,
Just
I hear like certain words sometimes, but I haven't gotten to the point of actually being able to understand what people are saying. But I'm around basketball all the time, so you know, you hear a few things that the coaches say, or just by their actions, you can tell what they're saying
like
without
what?
understanding.
Like what?
Well, I don't know what they would say at all, so I couldn't say the words, but just seeing how I've worked with not just players from Asia, but many players that don't speak English, and so you have to do it through demonstration. So using your hands, walking through things, demonstrating how to do things. It's kind of like a universal language, doing something a specific way, so you can kind of learn what people are saying without actually understanding what they're saying.
You've been ever coached in Vienna, and you coach here in Taiwan. You ever coach in the United States? What's the difference between like Western basketball and Asian basketball?
Yeah, I think obviously the level of play is the biggest thing. The size of the players at the professional level, that's the biggest difference. But I think it even goes back further to the culture of basketball outside of organized basketball. So in the United States, here Vietnam is very new to basketball, but in Taiwan, you can find basketball courts all over the country and play. So that's I think step one. But the intensity and how aggressive players are when they play outside, that's how you build toughness. In the United States,
In Taiwan
or in the United States, that's the big thing. Playing on the blacktop, no fouls. If you lose a game, you might not play for another couple hours.
Yeah.
So that culture starts before it even gets into organized and professional basketball. So you learn to be tough. You learn not to lose beforehand, because if there's 30 people waiting and you lose, you might not play for another hour or two.
But even that, won't you call foul once that if you drive and or shooting that got touched? Won't you call foul because once you lose, you wait for like 30?
Yeah.
30 or 1 hour.
So that's why people fight. That's why if there's a foul call, sometimes you wait for 5 minutes before you play again. Arguing, that's part of the game, and you learn to play through those fouls. You learn to be tough, because you realize. Sometimes you might hear this, but if it doesn't affect you going up, guys like, hey, you have to make that, and you start to understand like, hey, you do have to make that. You have to be tougher.
But sometimes when you play professional game, you have to earn or like you want to have your team some advantage.
But
You know what I mean?
professional game is different.
It's different from the streets.
Because
It's
they
different
have
from
a
the
ref.
streets.
Yeah.
Right.
So ref can do a judge.
Yep. In the streets, everybody's the ref.
Yeah.
Everybody's the ref.
Talking about the ref, would you share your experience to communicate with the ref in P.LEAGUE this season?
Yeah, it's
Anything interesting or anything you feel frustrated or anything?
So I knew what to expect because it's not my first time coaching in a country where I don't speak the language. So there's before the season starts, all the coaches, they meet with the refs, they talk about things that might be a problem. And I went through the same thing in Vietnam as well. When the refs don't speak the language, it's like talking to a wall because they're not going to talk to you. Most of them won't look at you, they won't engage with you. A few of them that do speak English, sometimes they'll try to explain and listen, but even some of the ones that do speak English, they'll act like they don't speak English and just ignore you the entire game. So the communication is very, very little. So it just ends up being me kind of just yelling into the air.
Ryan 他在这个体系上面打得非常灵活。那我们知道他其实过去来自 Minnesota Timberwolves，然后他曾经有在Spurs System as a G League coach。那他其实，在 NBA 待过一些体系。其实好像比较少问到他最喜欢或是最学习推崇的 NBA 球员是谁。
So actually, my favorite player didn't come from the Kings, but I loved all the players from the Kings. But growing up, I loved watching Tracy McGrady. Tracy McGrady was my favorite player growing up. The first jersey I had when I was a little kid was Sean Kemp. I had the Rain Man jersey, the green Seattle Supersonics jersey. Yeah. But like Tracy McGrady, Allen Iverson, I love those guys. They had like the game, but they had like a different style and swag. Like they weren't scared of anybody. They would go at everybody. They would talk to guys. They just brought all aspects of it, which I loved. But players from the Kings, I loved all of them at the time. Chris Webber was great. Bobby Jackson off the bench,
Yes.
It was such a fun team to watch. So that was unique, being able to see the Kings under Rick Adelman's system, and Rick Adelman was the first coach I learned under in the NBA. So it was really unique being able to watch him growing up and then learn his system as well. It was the first NBA team I worked for.
What did you learn from Adelman?
I think patience.
Patience?
Yeah, he had a very old, he had a much older staff. And so, the way they teached, they understood that, they knew what they were doing was the right thing. And so how they approached it, it wasn't just through yelling at guys all the time. It was through teaching. And if anything wasn't up to standard, then they would hold the players accountable and get mad at them. But I think, from an offensive system, and Mike D'Antoni said this before, because a lot of people see Mike D'Antoni as an offensive specialist. He's with the Suns, the Lakers, he's been all over the place, the Rockets. He said he learned the most from watching Rick Adelman. He's like, I just watch what Rick Adelman does. And so the offensive system that Rick Adelman had with spacing and putting guys in positions to be successful was really, really unique and very different.
What you thought that first time we got an interview by New Taipei Kings?
Yeah, I was.
What, Kings?
Yeah. I was excited because I knew some players. I'd coached some players. Brandon Dawson, I coached about 5-6 years ago in the G League. In the G League. Steph Yankovic, who's with the Dreamers now, him and Brandon Dawson were on the same team. I coached them together.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then Steph Hicks, I coached him over the summer when the Minnesota Timberwolves had a free agent workout, so I'd work with him. So a lot of the players that were here, Davon Reed, I'd coached against all these guys. So I was kind of excited, to get an interview here because okay, there's very high level talent coming over here.
In our culture in Taiwan, people writers serve you pour the tea to your cup. We'll do like this.
Do on the table?
Yeah, tap.
What is that? What does that
Means
mean?
that thank you.
Oh, it means thank you. Without saying it?
No, just tap.
Right. So it's kind of your way of saying thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, really? I even don't. I think like poker game,
No.
I think I'm not.
Hit me. 他有一种是玩那个扑克牌啊，就你要牌的时候要叫牌，对。但是在我们
So you can't do that for another drink, hit me with another drink.
Pretty much. such a roller coaster season for Kings.
Yep.
That in the beginning of the season that it's got very high. Like we raise your standings in the chart, and everyone says, "Wow, New Taipei Kings is one of the candidates to be the champion." But after the mid-season, some of the injuries, and in the last 8 games you got lost, 7 of them. So how to say that?
Yeah.
Just because injuries or anything that you find is kind of different, or like find some problems in your system?
Yeah, well, the reality is we didn't have our full roster, so that makes a difference. Not having certain of our main players that could play, and I think first that hit the team probably a little bit more emotionally, and so there are a couple games we had where it was just, I think, poor effort. That wasn't necessarily, it wasn't basketball that was beating us, it was more the mental side. And so we had to rewind and kind of start back over and practice and kind of start from the beginning. So I started doing some drills that I would do at the beginning of training camp to get us back to just playing hard for an entire game and just resetting our mind, focusing again. That's something that we were able to do, get back to playing hard through an entire game, and that's what we wanted to do leading into the playoffs. So it wasn't necessarily about winning. We want to win every game, but it was about perspective, having the right mind frame to be able to go from, hey, we're not playing hard, now we're playing hard, now we're ready to play in the playoffs.
因为季后赛马上其实，我们录制的时候还没开打，我们播出的时候就已经开打了。那我想要问的就是有关于季后赛，就是国王队能够走多远，那是不是跟他们的防守有关系？因为大家普遍认为国王队的进攻不错，
进攻没问题了，
但是防守呢，在下半季有时候偶尔去失去专注力。Talking about the defense,
Yep.
we always say that offense you win the show, but defense you win the champion.
Right.
But we know that the motion offense is pretty great, pretty smooth in Kings' system.
Yep.
But the defense not so much. And as for the playoff is coming, so how do you adjust or how do you focus, emphasize on the defensive side?
So actually the majority of stuff we do is focused on the defensive end. Defensively, the system's very different from what Taiwan's used to. So I'm still having to...
For example, like how different?
Yeah, so in Taiwan, let me rephrase that, not in Taiwan, but internationally compared to the NBA, you have a lot of basketball where there's rotations. So in the NBA, you try to limit rotations because on offense, there's 2 things you want to do. You want to create advantages, 5-on-4, 4-on-3,
Or size
2-on-1.
Or size advantages.
Size advantage, but especially 2-on-1, 3-on-2. You want those advantages as much as possible. Second, you want to create closeouts. So players helping here, and he has to run out to a player. There's going to be more space. So you want to create advantages and closeouts. So that's what our offense does. It puts guys in those situations. But what a lot of teams do internationally is they rotate all the time. They'll be in one action and then they rotate. But when you do that defensively, you're automatically putting yourself at a disadvantage. Okay. So the NBA tries to limit rotations so you can have an advantage on defense and you're not given the offense advantage by chance. And so a lot of guys have different habits through that rotation where they're wanting to overhelp or take shortcuts. And the NBA, you want to limit that so you can help. And actually, when we've had some of our best defensive games or series, we've been a very, very, very good defensive team. But different players being in and out, you need to have the right personnel to fit those scenarios. So it's made it difficult, from a learning perspective. Guys have had to break habits that they've had their entire life. And that's why not being here for training camp made a huge difference in being able to input that entire system. So that's a big, big difference between my philosophy and a Taiwanese philosophy that a lot of these guys are used to. For example, what some teams will do is say, ball handler, screener, this guy will show, this dribbler will go over the top, and then he'll help. Then these other guys over here, they have to rotate. So when you pass, now close out, rotations, and you're giving them an advantage.
Possible like center, right? So they have to help, but you don't want that to happen.
Yeah, so you need good technique, because what we try to do is rather than having 5 guys guard the pick and roll, we try to put ourselves in situations where only these two guys are guarding the pick and roll, and all these guys have to do are help and get back rather than rotating. Because if you pass and you're rotating, then you're creating closeouts. You're giving them an advantage before they even did anything.
Okay, I see.
And so that's why it was critical to me to get players who understood my system, ex-NBA players. You guys like Tom, I coached Tom. I coached Dre, I coached, I coached against Chris McCullough. Byron coming in, he understand, like those guys understand the concepts. So being able to teach them, it's easier for them to understand because they know kind of what those rotations are, where they can help, where they don't have to rotate. For some of the locals, it's still new. It's different.
Just want to switch.
Yeah, it's like hey.
所以他们不喜欢大角，他不喜欢大角度的换防，或者他不喜欢就是做那种很
没有应该是我刚听起来应该是有点像RYAN教练说，他希望是这两个人就去把两个交换防守掉，
对，
剩下旁边
不要过来补防，
落边的可能是一拍吧，补一拍就回去，不要整个换防。
对。
那对我们来讲，如果我们打的话，因为其实亚洲的身材会比较相近，所以其实我们是可以做 all switch。
对，好，那刚才呢，其实听完了 RYAN 教练讲这些的内容，其实我觉得我是蛮讶异的。
而且我们有点像信手拈来，所以 RYAN 教练他常常会把那个战术板放在床边嘛。
对，
就是有时候突然灵感来，那在这边就是这些就是他的防守者跟进攻球员。
他常常你把人家进攻球员喝，你把人家防守球员喝掉。就是他。Sorry,
yeah. Well, which defender is this? Is this a good or a bad defender?
Your defender tastes good.
Yeah.
Is it hard to get a job in professional basketball field if you're not like professional player?
Yeah.
Like, because in Taiwan it's super hot.
Yep.
It's super hard. It's kind of impossible.
Yeah, almost nobody.
就是应该没有人在台湾过去是没有打过篮球，或者是
当上总教练。
对。
Obviously here there's not as many teams, but the NBA there's 30 jobs and most of them, or there's 30 head coaching jobs, 30 teams, and most of them are filled by ex-players or people that have had connections, been around the game their whole life. You can get in. One, I think if you know somebody, that's the most important thing. Yes. I didn't have any connections, but there's a lot of jobs that are unpaid that you can get.
Unpaid? You mean like you did it for free?
Yes. So that's how I was able to get in and work in professional basketball. Like I had a background, I had a basketball background and had coached, but I had proven everywhere that I was willing to work. I had the references, and just getting one internship, an unpaid internship. Like I had many jobs where I didn't get paid. In my living situation, I had to pay for rent. And so there were many years where I wasn't making any money. I was paying for rent, but that's like I trusted my abilities. I was just kind of waiting for a chance, to actually make money, because getting an unpaid job is easier than getting a paid job.
Yeah, of course.
So, that was kind of, it's very difficult to get a job, but to move up is even more difficult.
哇，这台湾不得了哎！台湾的话，这个会被上网说
法规啊，低卡会上，
低卡会上，会被说是惯老板说哇，这个没有钱还叫我来，说你只钱到猴子。对，
这个我们这种方式我们叫收个学徒。对，收个学徒。
可是就作为像 RYAN 教练这样子的背景，他过去其实并不是球员啊，也并不是专业说打到 NCAA 一级的选手，但他还是想要在篮球这条路上有发展，他就知道说他必须要先做一些。可能，
我觉得可能算是别人不愿意的事情，
让你被看对，然后让你可以被看到。
没错，
因为如果你没有第一个被看到的机会的话，你就没有后面第2、3、4个机会。我觉得其实今天跟 RYAN 教练聊了很多，其实包含从我们东方西方的篮球文化，他个人的一些背景，然后还有像在国王队这一季他所
面临到的挑战。
刚才有那个进攻者跟防守者都在场上，现在都在桌上。
对，因为我们原本聊一聊，觉得说。很想知道，可是文字很抽象。
对，他直接
派上用场。
我们刚刚才把我们的防守热给
喝掉，
这进攻者给吃掉了。那还讲到了，比如说他在职场上面的一些个人，这是个比较少提到，就是跟篮球是完全无关，完全是他在选择职业上面，他觉得说可能需要他先付出一些什么，让别人看到，他才有第2个机会、第3个机会，才能够到台湾。来当国王队的总教练，我觉得其实这个在今天有蛮多事情是除了篮球之外，其实是很可以思考。
对，因为这个其实这样的状况不止在篮球上面，我觉得在任何的你想要尝试的事物，就是年轻的小朋友们我觉得都是非常有帮助。
Great talk, Coach.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun talking basketball.
Do you enjoy today?
Yeah, no, today's been great through and through. Getting to learn a few new things here, through the traditional way of doing things. It was a lot of fun. It was a great way to get outside of basketball for a little bit.
因为在我们的这次拍摄结束之后呢，这个 Ryan 教练就开始准备要投入他们的训练，他们接下来开始要集中住宿了。所以呢，我们也利用这个时间，然后大家就好好的认识 Ryan 教练。Because we're talking that after the shooting that you need to go back to practice and prepare for the playoffs.
Correct.
And hope you have a very good, strong playoff season.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're close to getting everybody healthy. So, but for us, it's the mindset. Whoever's there, we got to be ready to go. We're only guaranteed 3 games, but yeah, hopefully we can make a little bit of noise. It'd be really exciting for us being a new team to be able to, make a little bit of a playoff run.
Good luck all the way.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
See you in the
Appreciate
home
that.
game.
Absolutely. I'll see you there.
我们这期节目呢，非常感谢邀请到了国王队的 Ryan Marchand 总教练，另外还有彭尊在节目呢跟我们分享一些蛮有趣的故事。那我们也希望呢，国王队在接下来的比赛呢，不论输赢，都拿出精彩的内容。球场第一排，我们下次再见，拜拜，
Bye bye. Thanks, guys.